Hello, everybody. This is Gregory, 5-Minute Catholic Apologetics and Living, where 5 minutes of your time may get you to the divine. Today, we're going to talk about the old adage and saying about the Catholic Mass with the bells and the smells and why both of these things are great, and juxtapose it to Protestant services and also a large majority of Our Lady of Suburbia Catholic parishes that no longer do bells and smells. Now, before we begin, let's start with the prayer. Nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritui Sancti. Amen. Gloria Patri, Filii et Spiritui Sancto, secutora in principio et nunc et semper et seculi seculorum. Amen. All right, so you might have heard the term bells and smells, and certainly bells and smells is something that would be much more applicable to churches that you would have gone into pretty much in any century prior to the 1960s and all the way really to when Constantine legalized Christianity and allowed them to go into to public buildings. He donated a lot of buildings so the Christian churches could actually be in open and public. And the bells and smells are there for a reason. So let's look at the bells. So the bells, the chiming, especially during the consecration, this was done to notify people in the church that the consecration was occurring. Because you have to think back, let's say if you're in Vienna in 1339 AD, there's a lot of people in St. Stephen's Church, the main basilica there, and there's no sitting for the majority of the people, and they're standing, and everyone's piling into the church, and you can't see what's going on. The Mass, of course, is in Latin. So the ringing and the lifting of the Eucharist was a signal to people that this is a holy time, this is a consecration. So you see that's kind of like one of the times with the bells. The smells, of course, would be the use of incense, and incense is not some Catholic innovation at all. Incense, you can look in the Old Testament, was used by the Levite priesthood when they were making their offerings, their sacrifices at the temple and so forth. So that's one of many things that we kind of inherited from the Old Covenant, from our Judaic roots, and incorporated into the Mass. And again, the smell of incense is so aromatic. Yes, I mean, I've been in churches and I know people that they start coughing or you get kind of claustrophobic. It can be quite a bit. But there's a reason why it's there, because Mass, aside from, of course, being a holy sacrifice and a memorial of Christ's sacrifice, it's also there to lift our senses. And you think of the Middle East, or the middle-aged peasant working in the field, doing his Angelus 3 times a day. And they lived pretty much in hovels. And then you see this gigantic cathedral that his ancestors took 200 years to build. And you go in there and it's just a different world. It's a sublime world. It's a world that's supposed to lift you with the beautiful architecture, the stained glass, but also the bells and the smells and all these things. It puts you in a heightened state. So if your only experience with these things is in Mass, it's going to bring a focus to the service and kind of put you in that prayer mode. And so something like with incense, of course, you don't need incense, but it does make the Mass better, I would say. You also have candles. Candles elicit the eyes. And of course, you don't need to light candles for God to hear your prayer. This is not like a Catholic teaching, but it's a small T tradition that we've always had. I mean, going back to the very early times, of course, the ancient Romans used candles. Everybody used candles. It's not like another Catholic innovation. And please, I'll try to remember to put in the banner up here the retort to the Catholic Church incorporate pagan elements and pagan theology into Catholicism. Candles have been around. So if we're going to throw out everything that pagans had used beforehand, well, we're going to be throwing out a lot of things. But candles are there to bring a visual element. So it's really kind of a saturation and sensation of all of our senses. You hear the beautiful chanting. You see the beautiful stained glass, the flickering of the candles, the dark churches. If you go to Latin America, you can still see this. In certain places in Europe, you go in and it's all flickering candles that illuminates the inside of the church. And you can see these centuries old Baroque or Renaissance or Mannerist paintings that were painted a long time ago. You walk in, you smell the incense, you hear the music. It just heightens everything. And you juxtapose that with The Protestant service, we have an episode here like why, and not all Protestant denominations are the same, certainly. There's ones that are only one break off from Catholicism that still use these things, let's say like Anglicanism, Lutheranism. But the breakoffs of the breakoffs of the breakoffs, like the mega churches down the street, a large majority of them look like an auditorium. It's just white with screens and a podium, and it's just so devoid of any religiosity. And some would say that is the point. And you juxtapose our old churches to that. And look, certainly you can pray anywhere. I can pray in my closet if I need to. In my laundry room, I can pray. You can pray anywhere. But it makes sense to create a space that lends yourself to focusing on prayer. Here in my house, I took a picture and I posted it. I have a little home altar. And I also have a pond in the back where I have a Sacred Heart of Jesus statue and I planted roses around. I have to take a picture and post that too. These are just spaces that lend themselves to tranquility and put me in a place to pray. And I just think creating spaces in your church that lend itself to a heightened form of prayer helps. And we've all Catholics have gone to a lot of just regular Our Lady of Suburbia parishes, as Father McTeague says, that they've stripped away all this. And you see this with a lot of architecture that was built post-Vatican II. And there's a great book called Ugliest Sin that was written. I can't remember who wrote the book, but he talks about how a lot of dioceses hired Protestant designers to build post-Vatican II churches. And the whole point was to kind of do this multi-purpose rooms. So the rooms could be used for like presentations or slideshows or whatever. And in the process of hiring a lot of these kind of Protestant architects, you see the statuary gone. You see the stained glasses, which used to be very prominent going down the nave. Now there might be just very little here and there. You see a lot of candles, the candle plates just gone, the votive candle holders gone. You see incense, barely ever used in the typical parish. Maybe they bring it out for Easter Vigil. And according to the German, if I'm not mistaken, there are certain times where you're supposed to bring out the incense. But for the typical Sunday Mass, the large majority of Catholic parishes in the United States don't use incense at all. And I just pause it, like, why? Does the pastor have some sort of aversion to the smell and he gets all choked up like some people do with incense? I don't know. I think in some cases, you have priests that are just kind of modernists and they want to throw out a lot of the old to bring in the new, so to speak. But I think it does a great disservice. And I would tell you, again, this isn't correlation, causation, I don't know. But if you go to a parish that uses a lot of the bells and smells, that uses a lot of candles, dim the lights. I love churches, and there are some here in America, and I want to give credit, that they don't illuminate the entire sanctuary. Have the lights dim. Have the lights showing on the altar, because we need to see that. But down in the nave and in the sanctuary, just dim lighting. We just need enough to get in our pews. Have candles illuminate the church. Everyone likes that. It's better. It is better that way. Have the incense. Have the stained glass. Have the beautiful sacred music. If you look at Vatican II's document on sacred music, it's supposed to say that. It says that we're supposed to continue to use Latin music, Latin-based texts, and polyphonic, Gregorian chants, things like this. Not the Joan Baez 1960s Bob Dylan folk rock that you still find in a lot of Catholic parishes. So you see parishes that strip away all this. It's not surprising. A lot of those parishes are empty. They don't have families. They certainly don't have large families. And they certainly don't have a lot of people under the age of 40 who are going under their own volition. You might have 12-year-olds, 15-year-olds that are dragged by their parents. But most of these churches are replete with 50-year-olds, sexagenarians, octogenarians, and that's it. And then you go to the churches that still use the bells and smells. And it's not a confirmation bias, but it's typically going to be TLMs, Ordinary of the Chair of St. Peter, and some Novus Ordo parishes here and there that still do these things. They're full because people are drawn to it. Just like you used to see the teen masses on Sunday evenings. Let's bring out poor imitation of rock music as the kids will come out. The kids can sense this is just bad music and they don't want to be around bad music. How do you get the kids in? Bells and smells. Everybody is attracted to bells and smells. So for all 0.3 pastors that are listening to this video, please, if it's under your control, make the sacred space feel sacred. Bring out the incense, bring in more candles, dim the lighting, get rid of the radical left liturgical music directors that are just train wrecking your services. And how do you know they're train wrecking? Look around. Nobody's singing to Glory and Praise Volume 2. And make the Mass what it's meant to be, a beautiful sacrifice. Guys, post in the comments. I'd like to hear from you. Hit the notification, subscribe, and share button. Until next time, take care. God bless and pray.